We're back, folks. This is What on Earth is Happening. We're going to continue talking about the expressions of natural law, or what I call the real law of attraction, here today on the show. If we don't understand this, we're navigating blind on dark and stormy waters. This is the information that is the most occulted. This is the information that the dark occultists of this world do not want anyone to know about. Because if you know about how you are creating the reality that you experience, you'll change your actions. And you'll certainly stop listening to people with very little wisdom who are only trying to control you for their selfish gain. And that is what the dark occult is all about. If you understand how these expressions work, and you pay attention to the wisdom that is contained within nature's teachings, again, this isn't my information, folks. That's the thing. People think that I'm trying to, put out what I think. This has nothing to do with what I think at all. This is information that has existed for as long as the universe has existed. And we are only discoverers of it. That's it. We happen to discover how it works. And then we can convey the information about how it works. But this isn't, no one owns this information. This is information about how nature works, period. No one owns the law of gravity. People attribute that, the scientist Isaac Newton may have discovered its workings and then quantified, the law of how it actually works as far as quantifying it, but that doesn't mean it's Newton's gravity. That's an effect of the universe, period. It's a law that's in effect, period. So I want to make that distinction clear here for people that, are in the state of mind where they hear something and think that it's, this is this person's teachings. No, this isn't my teachings. I'm just a vehicle for it, of getting the word out about this, because it's the most important information that we could ever know. And it is knowable. Nature didn't put unknowable laws into effect to torment us for eternity. These laws are knowable. And they're there for our betterment, not for our confinement. They're there because living in harmony with these laws creates the most quality of life. That's why they're there. They're put there in the polarity of love. Okay? So going back to these natural law expressions, we work with, in our free will, the generative forces or polarities of love and fear. In each moment, we get to choose love or fear. And then something happens. Okay? We make a decision through the state of vibration that we are in, okay? And the thoughts that we hold in our mind, the creative aspects of our individuated consciousness, our thoughts, okay? Then they have an initiative expression. What I term an initiative expression. Initiate means to begin. So this is the beginning of setting something into motion, okay? A prime causal factor, okay? The snowball that gets down to the bottom of the hill had to start up top as a tiny pebble, and it rolled and it picked up steam and it picked up snow as it went, and then it became a big boulder with its force and its giant manifestation at the bottom of that hill, okay? It's the same way natural law works, okay? We have an essence or a prime polarity, love and fear, okay? Then that gets set into motion through the initiative expression. The positive initiative expression is the seeking of truth or wanting to know, okay? So I've simply termed this knowledge, all right? You could look at it as the desire for knowledge, the quest for knowledge itself. Okay? And there is such a thing as knowledge. So again, if you think there's no such thing as knowledge or nothing can be known, you're a solipsist, and you want to go back to podcast number 1 and start from there. Because that's when I talk about solipsism as being the ultimate lie, the biggest thing that the dark occultists always want to push off onto the people below them to get them to buy into anything that they happen to be talking about. Okay, solipsism is the idea that nothing can really ever be known, to put it simply. And this is bunk. Bunk, pure and simple. There is such a thing as knowledge. Things can be known, particularly natural law. It can be known, period. It not only can be known, it is known by many people. Not nearly enough people, but this is knowable information. Okay? If you don't believe that, I can't help you. That's one of the only beliefs required, is that there is such a thing as knowledge. It does exist and we can come to know it. That is a principle of faith, actually. Because I can't prove to you that something is knowable. When you know it, you know it. You can't prove to someone else that you're in love with someone else. You know it. You know that you're in love. Prove that you love your wife. Prove that you love your mother or your daughter or your son. You can't prove that to someone else. I mean, you could probably get them to accept that by the way you treat that person through your actions, but you can't prove that to anyone. You only know it. So it exists as knowledge. And each person has to come to that knowledge in a one-to-one basis with it. Okay? So knowledge or seeking of truth is the initiative expression, or the positive initiative expression, of natural law. The negative initiative or beginning expression is the opposite of knowledge, which is ignorance. Okay? It is the refusal of truth, or the refusal to set upon a journey to discovery. Okay? You don't set upon a journey to discover truth. There is no seeking of knowledge. And this is done willfully. A decision is made to do this. Okay? Whether it is done consciously or through pure fear, it's still an expression of fear. Okay? And it is the opposite of another form of not knowing, known as nescience. So I'd like to make the distinction between nescience and ignorance here. Nescience, the word you can break down, you can go to the Latin language and you could break it down. Ne in Latin is a negation or not, okay? And scio sciere, which is the basis of the word science, okay, means to know, to understand, okay? So nescio means not to know, but there's a specific connotation in which nescience is used. It's not to know, but not to have any reasonable expectation to know, because the information was never in your presence. It was always withheld. It was always just absent. So you could not reasonably have been expected to know. That's nescience. Ignorance, on the other hand, is something altogether different than that.
The Oracle Broadcasting Radio Network is...
We're back, folks. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm going to jump right back in to our discussion of natural law. Continuing with the chart on image number 4 on whatonearthishappening.com on the radio show page, where you can see images for today's show. We're looking at the expressions of natural law. We've talked about the generative force, or the polarity, the positive expression being love, the negative being fear. We're looking at the initiative expression, or the beginning of setting into motion these causal factors. The positive expression being knowledge, or the seeking of truth, and the negative expression being ignorance, or the refusal of truth. And I was talking about nescience versus ignorance. Nescience, there is no possibility of having discovered the knowledge. So there is no reasonable expectation for one to know. But ignorance means that the knowledge is present and actively, willfully refused. That's what ignorance is, the active, willful refusal of truth through fear. Okay? So do we have a nescient society or do we have an ignorant society? And I would state overwhelmingly that our society is not nescience. We're practically drowning in knowledge. Let me tell you something, folks. I've amassed so much knowledge, I probably could not go through the amount of stuff. The amount of stuff that I have gone through and absorbed and taken into myself is so overwhelmingly colossal that it's almost frightening to myself, if you could believe that. Okay? And in comparison to the amount of knowledge that is out there, it's like hardly anything. The amount of stuff that I still have sitting and waiting to go through is way bigger than what I've already gone through. And like I said, what I've already gone through is so colossal that it would make most people pass out, to put it quite frankly. Okay? Which shows how much knowledge is really out there in the world. We're drowning in it. But unfortunately, there's very little wisdom in our society because we are refusing that knowledge. We won't look at it. In fear, the generative polarity, we are choosing the negative initiative expression of natural law called ignorance. At least most of us are. And that's what our task is to help people get out of that level of fear called ignorance, ignoring that which is there. If you are ignoring a person, that means they are in your presence. You're not nescient of them. You know that they're there, but you're deliberately ignoring them. That's why it's called ignoring somebody. Same thing with information and truth. If you ignore something that is already there, you're not nescient of it. You're acknowledging it's there. You're willfully saying, I'm not going to look at that. And you know what? That's where most human beings are at because of fear. They understand the implications and the responsibility that goes with learning the truth, and they don't want that. They think they're going to remain blissfully ignorant. And ignorance is not bliss, folks. It's pain, as we're going to see. The next phase that natural law passes through the free will choice between love and fear is after it goes through the initiative expression of either seeking knowledge or refusing knowledge, refusing truth. Okay, seeking truth or refusing truth is the internal expression. So this is more of a feminine expression. The feminine energy is more at work because this is stuff that all takes place within us in the internal realm of the human psyche and the emotional plane. Okay? So the internal expression in the positive sense is known as sovereignty. You could put the word balance here. You could put the word self-knowledge, knowledge of self, okay? You could put the word self-ownership in there. You could put the word dominion in there. Rulership of the kingdom of oneself. Self-mastery could be substituted in there. There's many different ways you could word it, but it ultimately equates to the same thing. Knowing yourself to the extent that you understand that no one else owns you and that you own you and only you. You own the right to control your own thoughts, your own emotions, and your own actions, and to bring those into harmony with each other such that they are not contradictory within. Okay? This is the process of self-mastery. That means you truly have conquered yourself and you rule the internal kingdom of self. No one else does. No one else controls your mind. No one else controls your emotions. No one else controls your actions. Okay? So you're not on anyone else's strings like a puppet being made to dance by a puppet master. Okay? That's sovereignty. Sovereignty is the state of self-rulership. Now, some of the other slides that I put in here deal with these expressions. I've put slides that show love, extending their arms outward and being in the light, showing the expansive force. Another one about fear, showing a woman putting her hands up in front of her face and weeping, crying, saying no, I can't deal with that, because she's in a box, she's in the confines of this force of fear. I put up a slide. Image number 7 is knowledge. Okay, this is truly knowing oneself, being with oneself. Okay, all of the chakra is activated, the life force energy fully online and glowing around the person. This guy is lit up. He's activated all, he's running on all cylinders activated. Okay, and because this is a person who knows the self, the higher self. Okay, image number 8 shows what ignorance is. It's putting up a wall. It's putting up a barrier, a block to the truth. I don't want to know that. Keep that out there. I like being in my little box here. I like being behind my wall that shelters me from the real world. And most of all, it shelters me from true self-knowledge. Okay? Sovereignty, I show a picture of in slide number 9. Representation of. Of course, these are conceptual ideas. But there's good imagery to go along with a conceptual idea that will hammer it home in people's minds, which is why I make these slides. Okay? So this person has the light. They have grasped the true self. They know who they really are. They know that no one else owns them. They know that they exist under the light of the Creator. Okay? So what is sovereign? What does the word mean? Okay, it means above reign. Sove comes from the Latin super, which means above, and regnum means rule or control or reign. So it means above external control. No one else controls or owns you or rules you. You own you. You control yourself. You rule you. Period. Okay? A sovereign traditionally is a king or a queen, meaning one who is above rule or not a subject to any other. Not a slave, in other words. This can only come about through knowledge of self, chosen through the expansive force of consciousness or love. Okay? Are we beginning to see how this expression of natural law works? A sovereign is the ruler of the kingdom of self, as we've already said. One is who is in dominion over self. They own their own thoughts, emotions, and actions. These 3 aspects of consciousness do not exist in a state of non-duality or contradiction. They exist in unison. They exist in non-duality. Sovereignty is self-ownership. It is internal monarchy. The word monarch means one ruler.
You are listening.
We're back, folks. This is What on Earth is Happening. I'm going to jump right back into the expressions of natural law. I'm going to attempt to finish filling in this chart here and explaining the concepts on it so we can get to some calls in the final segment. We were looking at the positive internal expression of natural law, which we called sovereignty, which is a state of self-rulership, self-mastery, self-ownership, or internal monarchy. Monarch, mon, is the root for one, and arch, the root for rule or control. So it is one ruler, one owner. That's what a monarch is. Okay? This is another reason that the dark occultists have a program called Monarch. Okay? It's about tormenting the monarch, slave, the one ruler. Okay? It's about preventing the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, which is why they chose that symbol, the butterfly, the monarch. It's very, very sinister, their reasons for choosing the symbols that they do, okay? Because they want to be the one ruler of everything. It's a turning on its head, this concept of what a monarch, an internal monarch, really is all about, okay? So a sovereign is a self-ruler. They don't attempt to rule other people. They know that they are sovereign, that they are masters of the self, and they don't want other people attempting to make them subject or slave. Okay? So the negative internal expression of natural law, it comes about when one has chosen fear and then chosen ignorance, and therefore they become confused within. The internal expression, the negative internal expression of natural law is a state of internal confusion. It is the state of not knowing the self. Therefore, you are confused within. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions have not been brought into harmony or unison. They are in a state of opposition or contradiction. You think one thing, you do another. You feel one way, yet your actions betray your thoughts and emotions. Okay? So, confusion gives rise to opposition, internal opposition, which then lays one open to the manipulation of others. In other words, they become in this state of fear and ignorance and internal confusion. They have become subject to mind manipulation. They are easily preyed upon in the realm of the psyche. In other words, they're an easy prey for mind control. Okay? Very important to understand how this works. That state can only come about when people do not know who they are, when they become identified with that which they are not. And one of the main ways they become identified with the physical form is the fear of death. That's one of the primary forms of fear. Identification so much with the material realm that that's all they ever give any credence to or place any importance upon or value on. And once you're in that state, you're definitely in a state of pure ignorance, and that's always going to give rise to a state of internal confusion or opposition, and that's always going to lay you open to external manipulation by others who do know who they are and yet have chosen a dark path, even in full knowing, psychopaths and dark occultists. So, and again, that's the very few. Most people are simply in this state because of fear and kept there because of fear. That now we have these three things, okay? The generative polarity, the initiative expression, then the internalized expression. Then they actually begin to create something in the outside world. Okay? This is the correspondence principle at work now. We've had an essence, and then a very beginning or a seed planted. Then we've had an internalized expression that hasn't broken through the surface yet, but it's happening in all the individuated units of consciousness called the individual. Okay? Then that quantum effect gets built up until something actually happens in the external world. We are creating externally a state, an external state of mind. Okay? This is the external expression, or the masculine expression, if you will, of natural law. The positive expression being, of course, freedom. Because when you work through the polarity of love, you know the self, you understand that you are sovereign, that you rule your own thoughts, emotions, and actions, and you don't rule anyone else. We have a society that is based upon freedom in that condition. Freedom is the state of external anarchy, meaning a world without rulers or owners of other people. Because the individuals within that society own and rule and govern themselves. And there needs not be any externalized control. And I would say even if people don't exist in the state of sovereignty, attempting to impose external control is always going to result in something bad or negative. Always going to result in disorder and chaos, because you're wasting the energy to attempt to physically control because you're identified with the physical world versus teaching someone how natural law actually works. And that's the reason cops do what they do. They're totally in ignorance over natural law, and they think they're going to control people into obeying natural law. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works out for you in about 22 quadrillion years, and you'd still be doing the same thing, moron. Because that's what somebody has to be to think that something's going to work like that. You literally have to be a complete idiot. And the word idiot is derived from Greek, and you know what it means? One who does not know the self. That's what an idiot is. Somebody who thinks they're going to continue to do the same thing and get a different result, which is the exact definition of insanity. Well, I want this glass of water to be cold, but I'm continuing to put it over top of a heat source. I'm continuing to warm it up by putting it over this low heat. But I want it cold. Well, you need to remove it from the heat and maybe put it in the refrigerator or the freezer. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep the heat on it. I mean, this is literally how insane this is. It's somebody saying they want one thing and yet continuously doing the opposite thing and thinking they're magically going to generate that expression that they want to see, that they're just saying they want to see, but they're not willing to do what it takes to actually manifest that. I'll dry my clothes. Let me go get a garden hose. I'm going to put them down in a pile and I'm just going to spray water on them all day and I'll dry them. Just wait and see. Sure you will. Great. Good luck with that, crazy person. You're completely insane if you think you'll ever dry any material like that. Good luck. Because you're choosing one thing and saying you want the exact opposite to manifest when you can never manifest that thing by using what you're using. It's impossible. And if you think that's how it works, there's no other way to say it, but you're dumb. You're dumb. Let's not be apologetic to people who are dumb like this. Let's continue to try to explain that you can't do it that way, and here's how it really works. But let's not try to say, oh, I have a whole lot of respect for you. I don't have respect for dumb people. The problem is they need to have respect for themselves, meaning take another look at your actions. Take another look at your free will decisions and what you've chosen to bring into manifestation through your ignorance. That's what respect is. Re in Latin means again, and specto spectare means to take a look at. To look at. Respect means to take another look at yourself. That's what respect is. And until you respect yourself, it's been said many times, you can never really truly respect anyone else. And someone who doesn't know themselves, or in other words, an idiot, a person who knows not the self, can never actually show anyone any real respect because they don't even respect themselves. That's the state of confusion, folks. It's internal anarchy, meaning there is no ruler within. You don't rule yourself. See, I'm not going to sugarcoat this because people want it put in delicate, sensitive terms. That's not my style, and I'm never going to be like that. I'm going to be totally hard-hitting and telling it like it is because that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to be like...
natural and man-made disasters and economic turmoil...
Okay, folks, this is the last segment of What on Earth is Happening for this September 11th, 2011 edition. I feel pretty good about what we've covered on the show so far. I want to wrap up the chart of the natural law expressions, or what I have termed the real law of attraction here today. And then we have a caller waiting on the line. So, we were looking at the positive external expression of natural law, which is freedom. After you have chosen the polarity of expanded consciousness, sought the truth, sought the understanding of the higher self, gained that understanding and know that you're a sovereign being, and then live in that way, in unison, in thought, emotion, and action, not in contradiction. You can build a society based on freedom, which is the absence of external rule. Okay? The negative external expression is the society that is based in control. Control is the external negative expression. So this occurs when we choose the polarity of fear. We refuse to learn the truth, particularly about who we are. That's called ignorance. We develop a state internally of confusion, which is internal anarchy. We do not rule the self. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions are not in unison or in harmony with each other. We then seek external control in this state. We want to control other people because we have no control of ourselves. No self-governance, no self-control, no self-mastery. So, in that level of complete imbalance, we want to go and impose our will on others. And this is what every state, every government throughout time, and all of its minions and all of its agents have ever been. That's the state of consciousness that they have ever been in. Not one of them has ever been in a state of enlightenment. Ever. There is no such thing as an enlightened agent of the state. An absolute truth. People have a hard time with that. I shouldn't even say people have a hard time with that. The ego has a hard time with that. You want to think that there can be such a thing as an enlightened cop. There can be such a thing as an enlightened soldier. There can be such a thing as an enlightened judge. All bunk ideas. Does not exist. Never has existed, never will exist. Because they think control is going to create in any way anything that resembles freedom, order, or goodness. And it never can. Because it is always based upon confusion, ignorance, and fear, ultimately. So that's the negative external expression. Finally, these choices, these free will choices between these two polarities and expressed through the initiative, internal and external expressions of natural law then become a manifestation in the long-term sense. Okay? This is what I call the generative expression. You started with the generative force. It worked through a beginning stage, an internal stage, and an external stage. And then it becomes a manifestation in our world. The generative expression or the manifestation of the positive polarity, the positive expression of natural law, is called order or good, what we consider good. This is in harmony with what we've stated that we want for ourselves. We don't want to suffer. We want to see beings get along. We want to see good things for ourselves and others. That's called good or order. It is our ultimate will for ourselves. We don't want to suffer. Okay? That is the final end result when we work with the polarity of love or expanded consciousness, when we work with the seeking of truth, which is knowledge, gaining knowledge of self above everything else. When we recognize our sovereignty, that no one else rules us, and we become sovereign, meaning we actually live in a state of self-mastery, there will be freedom in our societies, not external rulership, but there will be external anarchy, the absence of externalized imposed control or coercion, and that will create a society that is based in order, true order, or in other words, goodness. Things will be good for us. The negative generative expression or manifestation is the exact opposite of that state. It is known as chaos, or what we call evil, what we experience as evil, suffering, the perpetuation of self-imposed suffering. And this happens because we've chosen the dynamic of fear, we've remained in ignorance of self, refused to look at the truth and accept it, existed in a state of internal confusion, which is internal anarchy. We have not ruled ourselves or attained any self-mastery, and then in that state of confusion have attempted to impose externalized control over the populations. Therefore, we are creating nothing but more self-perpetuated suffering, which is known as chaos, or what we have called throughout the centuries, evil. That is how natural law works, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it has always worked since the beginning of time. This is how it will always work until the end of time. This is not my information. I am a vehicle for this information. The end. That's it. I can't put it in any simpler terms. Study it, attempt to understand it, listen to the podcasts again, go through some of the material that I put out when I, on the a podcast a few weeks ago when I put out some PDF documents that deal with natural law and its principles, and attempt to learn more. I mean, that is how it works. It can't really be stated any other way or with any further simplicity. This is about as simplistic as I can make this information. Okay? And the last slide for today, in image number 18, I have put arrows on the chart to show that it's always a one-way flow. You can never create ignorance through love. So it doesn't go across the chart. You start here and then you create something in that other column. It's a one-way flow, folks. Okay? You start with that which is at the top of the column, and then it cascades down through those rows. Okay? It's a one-way directional flow. You start with love. That's how you're going to attain knowledge. That's how you're going to recognize your own sovereignty. That's how you're going to create freedom. And that's how you're going to create order or good. You start with fear. You're always going to exist in a state of ignorance and refuse truth. You're always going to create more internal confusion in your own being. You're always going to create more external control in the outside world, and that's always going to get you chaos or evil. That's it. That is how natural law actually works. It works on a collective level. It's a quantum effect, and that is the real law of attraction, ladies and gentlemen. That's the real law of attraction. Let's go to the phones. Here we go. David in Idaho. You are live on What on Earth is Happening, David from Idaho. You can take us out today. What do you have for us?
That was beautiful, Mark, and you have a talent for this. I've noticed that when I was young, I was getting forced to do things, and then I rebelled, and I wasn't going to do it anyway, and then natural law would attack me anyway. And what you just answered my own question. Also, I see natural law in nature now like I never could before from your descriptions. I see it in nature as fractals, and then I see it in my own life, little things that I do that end up to be big, like my garage being a mess. I do a little thing, and it turns into a mess, and you just explain it so beautifully. Thank you.
The quantum effect. That's right. Little amounts eventually add up to large amounts. So when people say, oh, you doing this isn't going to make that much of a difference, I say it is irrelevant whether that's going to change it by my one action. I'm not going to participate in the thing that I know will always create the opposite effect of what I want, whether a billion other people are doing it or not. I'm going to withdraw my support from that because I know it's only going to ever create chaos or disorder. And I'm going to put my attention on that which can create order, harmony, or goodness in the world. That's it. It doesn't matter who's doing the opposite as far as my choice goes. Of course, yes, it matters because they're going to be creating chaos in the world as a result of that choice. But as for my decision not to participate with something, it doesn't matter what other people choose. That's their free will decision. I'm going to make mine. So absolutely, your point about it being a quantum effect and how that works through fractals as well is very, very valid.
I'm feeling, and it's doing process. Thanks, Mark.
David, thank you so much, man, and a great call to take us out for the day. That's all we have time for, folks. I'll see you here next Sunday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 to 6 Central. You've been listening to What on Earth is Happening here on the Oracle Broadcasting Radio Network.